All right, we're pleased to be joined by one of the best in the business. Always a treat to talk to Matt Hayes, senior national college football writer for USA Today Sports, and of course 1010XL Radio out of Jacksonville. Matt, thank you so much for joining us once again.
Hey, no problem. Always great to be here, Michael.
So I really wanted to ask you. I know you're so close to the Carson Beck situation that was in Jacksonville. Obviously, you do the show there. He's from Jacksonville. Where do you think Georgia goes from here without Carson Beck? And I know with your reporting, there was obvious interest in him returning. And I'm sure you've heard this, but this kind of blew my mind when I heard it the other day, that this was the first time a Kirby Smart team had ever been outrushed in Athens. Where do the Dogs go from here, you think?
Well, I mean, I think they're very excited about Gunnar Stockton. I think they think he can be a winner at a high level, and not on the SEC, but on the national level. So I think they're fine with him. And to your point about running the ball, yeah, absolutely. There's all kind of benchmarks that were not good that were set this year at Georgia. The benchmarks in the Kirby Smart era. They rushed for less than they ever had. They gave up more rushing yards in a long time, gave up more sacks than they ever have. So there's a lot to fix. And I don't know that it's like, when I say fix, I don't mean like, oh my gosh, the world's ending. I mean, there's just tweaks that need to be made. And I say this all the time, Michael, honestly, and I truly believe this with my heart. The greatest thing that Nick ever did at Alabama, Nick Saban, was he convinced those guys, even after they won a national title, that the next year when they came in, he convinced them, I know you got to the mountaintop last year, but guess what? There's even better gold up there this year. Go get it. And they did. And they stayed focused year after year after year. And I honestly think that Georgia, the last couple of years, has lost a little bit of its focus. You ask anyone right now, what team do you not want to play, all things being equal, for the last 4 or 5 years? It's Georgia. And I think going in the next season, it'll be the same thing. It'll be Georgia, because they have that talent. They have the elite 4- and 5-star high school talent that they've coached and developed, which is the key. I mean, no one develops players like Kirby and his staff do. So I think they need to get back to like sharpening the point. You know what I mean? I don't think they're all on the same page right now. And there's a lot going on in that program. And that happens when you win. And that's not unique to Georgia. It happens everywhere. When you win, there's the human condition is to always fall back a little bit. Well, we've done this. We've got it made. And you don't. It's a new season every year. And that's what these guys fight. That's what these coaches fight year after year after year.
Yeah, and another really interesting point in your recent story, I'll link it in the description so everybody can check it out. But on Carson Beck, that Alabama reached out. I'm not surprised by that. But what, if anything, does that say about where Kalen DeBoer's at right now with the quarterbacks he has on his roster?
I don't know if it says anything about it. I also don't know if it says anything about Georgia either. If Carson Beck's out there, 135 FBS teams are going to want him. I mean, it's not even a question. Ohio State would want him. So I don't understand why Alabama fans were so upset, Michael. They were more upset than Georgia fans were when Georgia fans found out that Kirby and Georgia was interested in him. I don't get it. I don't understand it. You're talking about a guy who's played at a high level, who has shown in big games that he can play well in big games. Why wouldn't anyone want that guy as their quarterback? So yeah, it was a little odd, certainly a little odd. It's a fresh start for Carson. I don't think it has anything to do with he didn't love Georgia or he didn't want to be around Kirby. It has nothing to do with that. I think it's just, I spent 5 years there. I spent 5 years in Athens. I dedicated 5 years to that place. I could have left a lot earlier in my career, and I stayed and did the right thing. And I think he was just done. It was one more year. Let's see what happens someplace else. Let's try something different, try something fresh, and we'll move forward. And they'll move forward. George will be happy, and he'll be happy. Unfortunately, I think it's always like it's the negativity that comes about it. Like people immediately think, oh, there's got to be something negative to it. And there's nothing negative to it. He was just done, and he was just, I've been there for 5 years. I think it's something new. I need to try something new. And it wasn't because he wasn't loyal. It wasn't because there was a strife between him and Kirby, because there wasn't. He just was ready to move on. That's all. And I don't understand the whole Alabama stuff either, Michael. It's just bizarre to me. I mean, why wouldn't you want to improve your quarterback room? What? So the Alabama fans would rather have a quarterback who has, how many snaps has Ty Simpson played in the last 3 years? I mean, what, maybe 80, 100? They'd rather have Ty Simpson than a guy like Carson Beck. Weird. Weird. They'd be upset at their coach because he tried to go get a guy who's won at a high level in the very conference they compete in. Just a little strange, that's all.
Right. And I was talking with someone just this week. This is the time when everybody's putting out their, early top 25, way too early, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And for years and years and years, it was okay. I mean, it was not even a consideration. Alabama was one
Alabama, right.
or two, if it was off year for Saban. And you're seeing these lists pop up, and Alabama's not even I mean, I think consensus maybe is not the right word, but they're hovering around 10. And some people got them outside the top 10.
Right.
Is this the future reality where Alabama's like everybody else, or are they at a little bit of a crossroads, which is kind of crazy to say, just entering year 2 under Kalen DeBoer?
I mean, I think it's the Vogue thing now to say, oh, they're in decline now. I mean, number one, what did people think was going to happen when the greatest coach in the history of the sport leaves? That's number one. Number two, of course, they're going to lose players because guys that signed on to go play for him don't want to play for him anymore, don't want to play for the new guy. So there's going to be transition. There's going to be transition in year one. There'll be transition in year two. If I'm an Alabama fan, I look at the guy's track record. I look at Kalen DeBoer's track record and say, okay, the dude can coach. Clearly he can coach. So I think once he gets that entire team buying into what he's selling, which I'm not so sure that entire team was bought in last year. Once he gets that, and once he gets a quarterback that fits what he wants to do, then you're going to see that team take off. So could it be this year? Absolutely, it could. And by the way, there's still another portal to open in the spring. So there are guys that may not be happy where they are, and they finally figured out, look, this isn't going to work here. So Alabama's not done looking at that quarterback room. I can tell you that right now.
Another topic you wrote about, I put a link to this one as well. Quinn Ewers off to the NFL. Were you surprised by that at all, with all the money being thrown around? And I know not everybody's motivated by money, but it seems to me like it would have been a no-brainer if these reports of $6+
Right.
million are accurate. That's pretty shocking to me that he didn't stay in college football.
I think it's a difficult dance right now for all these players. When you're at that third year or fourth year and you can stay or you can go, and it's the injury. I think that's what it is. Like if you get a career defining injury, you blow out your Achilles, you blow out your ACL. I mean, your stock value will decrease. And you can say, well, these guys have insurance policies, but an insurance policy is not going to cover a second contract. A second contract in the NFL is generational money. That's legit. So I think they're looking at it like that. I also think in Quinn's specific situation, what I wrote was, look, he's fallen on draft boards. He's probably going to be a second or third round pick. The money that you're going to get as a second, third round pick actually won't be close to the money he could get. Like say if he went back to Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State would probably pay him $4 million, $5 million for a 1-year shot. But then the idea is this, all right, do you go play that year? And what if you get injured? So that's, I mean, they're all dealing with that. They all have to make that decision. And at the end of the day, some will choose to stay in college because they love college and the money is good. And others will say, I'm not going to get injured. There's no way I can do that. I can't put myself in that position. I got to go start earning right now playing this game, earning at a different level, obviously.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you've seen this. I don't know how much stock to put into early Heisman odds. They're not worth that much. But Garrett Nussmeier right now, according to FanDuel at least, best odds, not in the SEC, but in the country to win the Heisman. What's your expectations for Garrett Nussmeier in LSU this year?
Well, I mean, let's be honest. Brian Kelly began last season saying he thought the offense would be better than it was the year before. And that offense the year before with Jaden Daniels was mighty special, man. I think they struggled a little bit in a lot of areas. They struggled to run the ball. They struggled to protect Garrett, which is interesting because they've got two guys that are going to tackle that are going to go in probably the first 45 picks. I would imagine Will Campbell's going to go in the first 10 or 12, and Emory Jones will probably go in the first 40. Those are legit NFL players, those two guys. But I think the middle three struggle for them. That's why they couldn't run the ball. That's why they were susceptible to that interior rush. And that affected Garrett. There's no doubt about it. He was constantly throwing off his back foot. I think he's really talented, really talented. And receivers, I think they got some good young receivers as well. So if they could protect him, yeah, I think he could have a big year. I don't know that I would put him at number one in the Heisman though right now. I
Yeah.
think also, Michael, a lot of those things are just okay. Well, who put up a lot of yards last year? Let's put him up there at the top.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Arch is number two, so
Right.
but
That
because
kind of
he's a
tells you the
name, you know.
situation right there.
Hey, another one. I know you got the pulse better than anybody. Billy Napier's Florida program. What's the expectations in year four? They navigated it last year, but it's still a gauntlet. And I
It's worse
mean,
this year. It's going to be worse this year
I
because you're at LSU, you're at Ole Miss, all those teams that you played at home, those big home games at Miami, they're all on the road now.
right.
So, like, I mean, you drop UCF from the schedule, but that's not, I mean, and you pick up a group of five school, and for the love of God, they play Long Island University to start the season. I mean, that should literally be outlawed. The SEC, Greg Sankey should step in and say, you're not playing Long Island University, okay? It's just not happening. But I mean, not just Florida. I mean, any SEC team. You're not playing Long Island, okay? You're not playing Siena. I don't even know if Siena has football. Now I'm hitting all the New York schools. You can't do stuff like that. But anyway, I mean, yeah. He's got a lot to go through. I mean, they've got to win games. They've got to show that they're improving. I don't know that the pressure has been minimized just because they won 8 games. I mean, you follow along with another 7-5. I mean, what does that show about the program? No, I mean, I think Scott Strickland, when he came out and did what he did, first off, it was a brilliant move. When he did it in Texas week, when he said, "Okay, Billy Napier's our coach," he knew in Texas they were going to get annihilated, and he knew he couldn't come out the week after getting annihilated and say he's our guy. We believe in the process. So it was a brilliant move by him. Okay. And he did it. And then Billy paid it off by beating LSU, beating Ole Miss, beating Florida State, beating Tulane. Um, but you got to continue that. You got to ride that momentum. And I think if they start to struggle, or if they lose early, or if they go down to Miami, get beat by 2 or 3 touchdowns again, when Miami has, Carson Beck who can throw it around, man, if he's healthy, um, yeah, he's going to be in the same situation where people will say, where is this program going? And by people, I mean legit people within that Florida bubble who give money, who want the team to win.
Right, because I mean, I can't recall this. I'm sure it's happened before, but I mean, it basically sounded like he was 1 foot out the door. They had the money raised, and then they rallied the troops, so to speak. And I can't imagine people being happy with 6-6, or even 7-5, given DJ Lagway. I try not to hype up these guys too much, Matt, because then when they fail, when I call them Joe Burrow 2.0 and they fail to live up
Right.
to it, people think they're horrible. But I truly think DJ Lagway may be the best quarterback in the country. I mean, it may not be there just yet, but I think by the end of his college career, he could get there. I think he's that good.
Yeah, he's certainly uber talented. There's no doubt about it. And they've got pieces around him to help him too, which is key. I think another smart thing Scott Strickland did. When he was talking to me, he said, I told him, there are boosters who say they have the money to buy out the contract, and he quickly shot back. Well, tell him to give that money to the collective, to Florida Victoria's collective. And lo and behold, they start winning. Guess where that money goes? Right to the collective. And in the after the end of the regular season, they flipped like what, 13 players from other schools, like legit blue chip players. They flipped. So Scott Strickland stood his ground, gave Billy, and now it's time for Billy Napier next season, this coming season, to pay him back and to reach 9 wins in the regular season, to win games that people think they're not going to win. So I mean, that's the belief, and we'll see what happens.
Hmm. Well, I also, I've been reading your stuff, listening to your stuff for so long. I know you're so well connected. I got two big picture questions for you. What, if anything, do you think will change with the SEC championship, and quite frankly, all the championship games? Will those? I realize there's a lot of money invested. Will that ever change? Will we go away from that? Could we make it a play-in game? What? Anything you're hearing on that?
I mean, I would never say never to anything because who knows with where the sport is headed. But that SEC championship game is the fabric of that conference. That's what made the SEC what it is today, that game. When that started in 92, that changed everything. And I would be beyond shocked if the SEC presidents said, "Yeah, let's get rid of the SEC championship game." Not only because it's a gigantic moneymaker, but at some point they're gonna sell that thing as a standalone product. And I know they've got it as the whole package with ESPN. But if they were smart, they would sell it as a standalone product, and I'm pretty sure that that's something they're looking at.
But wouldn't it make more sense instead of Texas, Georgia, who they're both in? Like it could have been Ole Miss, Alabama, and the winner goes to the playoff. I mean, that to me would make the game more valuable.
Or Ole Miss could just beat Florida.
Right.
I mean, honestly, Michael, that's I think the problem is when we get into situations like this where that team didn't get in or this team didn't get in, it's their own fault more times than not.
Yeah.
Now, granted, there are situations like how in the world does Indiana get in with the schedule they have? I understand all of that. Okay, I understand that argument. I have no problem with that. But at the end of the day, if you have a road and the road is clear and all you have to do is win, yeah, it's hard to blame anyone but yourself.
Yeah.
Especially when you're a double-digit favorite.
Yeah. And then one other big picture one, I know this is like a moving target and it changes. I think even the last time you were on, I asked you about this. I'm just kind of curious if you heard anything new. Future of the SEC scheduling, 8 games, 9 games, and how in the world will we keep Texas and Oklahoma and Texas A&M, for example, and anything you're hearing on any of that?
You know what? I think they would go to 9 if they got the money for it. Like if ESPN said, we're going to give you this amount of money, and it was a huge jump in money, because at this point, everything is about generating revenue. And how do you generate revenue so these universities can continue to fill their coffers while they're paying annually 20 to 23 million in these annual pay for play salaries, which begin July 1, which, by the way, it's not just going to be 20 million or 20 to 23, whatever the number is for every year moving forward, Michael. It's going to increase every time the media rights increase. They're going to get a percentage of that. So they're trying to find ways to generate revenue. So in that vein, the easiest thing to do would be to add a 9th game and get a ton of money from ESPN for it. But if they don't, no, they're going to stick at 8. They're split in the league about who wants to play 8 and who wants to play 9. And the difference will be how much money they can get for it.
Yep. Just like everything else. All right, final question. I really appreciate your time. You put out this tweet. I'll throw it up here on the screen. I had to ask you about this. Pete Carroll, 73, younger than Nick Saban by 46 days. Of course, Pete Carroll was just hired by the Raiders, I believe. Somebody in the NFL or college football will take a run at Nick. Doesn't mean he'll bite, but someone will. What do you think there's any shot that we see Nick Saban coaching again, whether NFL or college football?
Let me just say this to you. And again, I don't have any intel on this, okay? But I wouldn't be shocked at all if someone already hasn't reached out to him, someone in the NFL, be it a personnel spot as a GM, be it as the head coach, or someone in college football hasn't reached out to him. He's a sharp dude. He's a great coach, the greatest he's ever coached in college football. He was an elite assistant in the NFL. He went to the Dolphins, and he was there for 2 years, and he was in the process of turning that thing, okay? So, yeah, I believe me, people will take a run at him. I think he's very happy what he's doing. He's great at what he's doing, by the way. He's fantastic. I love seeing him on TV. You see this different side of him that, rarely did you ever see when he was a coach. But again, Michael, you got a guy like that that's available on the market. Who in the world wouldn't take a run at him?
Well, I think
Miss Terry's gonna have a lot to say about that, obviously, but yeah.
I was hoping that like Sarkisian made the move to the NFL, and then they called Nick Saban. I mean, we go full circle with Saban in the Texas job. All right, before you go back, can you remind my audience how to follow you, how to find your work?
I'm at usatoday.com, USA Today Sports Network, and you can also listen to me on 1010XL in Jacksonville, 2 to 4 daily. East.
All right. Thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate it. I'll